The first people to step into a new world aren't those who hold the map, but those who dare to question the map currently in use. This quote is unnamed, as such individuals rarely have time to leave their identity behind. We've grown accustomed to seeing the internet as a self-evident utility, like water flowing through pipes, like light illuminating at the flip of a switch. But have you ever wondered who designs that switch? Who owns the pipes? And whether that flow still provides value to its creators, or only enriches those at the end of the line? If every path on the network is pre-programmed by an invisible group of people, do we truly still have freedom of movement? If you can't take your writing elsewhere, can't choose who sees the content you create, can't retain the community you build, does your ownership truly exist, or is it merely an illusion, maintained only as long as you fit the algorithm? These aren't technical questions. They are questions of power, of ethics, and ultimately of how we choose to live in a programmed world. The book *Red Gridon offers no advice. It doesn't encourage speculation, nor does it rally for revolution. This book simply opens up the possibility that the internet can be rewritten, that new networks where users are owners, where software is an unbreachable contract, can exist. The issue isn't with technology, but rather with whether we are brave enough to redesign the structure of power not with slogans, but with code, not with declarations, but with architecture. And if we can, do you dare to step into that world not as a consumer, but as a co-creator? Let's begin to summarize this book. They say great revolutions always arrive in messy, incomplete, incomprehensible forms. And when they appear, their inventors sometimes can't even clearly explain what they are. Outsiders largely dismiss them as madness. As physicist Freeman Dyson once said, if a new idea does not initially strike people as crazy, there is no hope for it. That's the feeling I, someone who has lived within the internet for the past 25 years, have always carried. From the very first days of seeing the first line of email code to witnessing children across the world building social networks on personal blogs, the internet was unlike old inventions. It wasn't like a ship or a light bulb. It was something different, an open symphony that anyone could join. No permission needed, no assets required, no power necessary. You just needed an idea and a bit of daring. The early days of the internet were a golden age of freedom. Anyone could write a blog, build a website, invent software. There were no censorship gates, no bosses in the middle. You owned what you created. You didn't pay to be seen. You weren't threatened with deletion just for violating an algorithm. The rules were simple. You created value, you kept the value. But then everything changed. In the mid-2000s, while I was busy funding new startups like Pinterest or Kickstarter, a small group of large companies quietly began to tighten their grip around the internet's neck. Not through public declarations, not through violence. They simply offered free, convenient, attractive services that users couldn't resist. And then, like all sophisticated empires throughout history, they began to levy taxes. Today, 1% of the largest social networks control 95% of traffic. 1% of search engines dominate 97% of global searches. Apple and Google hold over 95% of the App Store market share. The 5 largest tech companies currently account for nearly 50% of the entire NASDAQ 100 market capitalization. And I'm talking about the world outside of China. If the early internet was a free road with no tolls, now it's like a chain of highways controlled by corporations, and you pay fees with money, with personal data, and often with your very voice. You might ask, so what? The problem lies in the fact that most of the internet, what we do, share, and create, is a network. Email is a network, Facebook and TikTok are networks, PayPal and Venmo are networks, Uber is a network. Networks are the essence of the internet, and when networks become the private domain of corporations, all innovation outside their ecosystems is like castles built on sand. Try launching a new social network, you'll understand. Or try building a new financial tool without going through Apple or Google. You'll see that freedom is no longer an internet default, but a privilege granted and easily withdrawn. We live in a world where $150 billion flows into the pockets of social networks each year, and almost all of that money doesn't reach the creators of value. Those who write articles, shoot videos, share ideas, most of it falls into the hands of network operators, the gatekeepers. Think about it. You put in the work to create content, attract millions of viewers, generate influence, and bring in profit. But you don't own your audience. You don't get to choose which algorithms prioritize whom. You can even be deleted at any time, and you can't sue anyone. We call it the creative economy, but in reality, it's a rental economy in creative clothing. We've grown accustomed to living in an internet where everything is free. Just log in and use it. But have you ever paused to ask who is paying for that free and what the true cost is? The answer is, you are the product. Your data, your behavior, your habits, emotions, relationships, everything you search for and click, like, on all are collected, analyzed, sold, optimized for advertising, even to some extent manipulating your mood and political orientation through algorithms. This is called surveillance capitalism, an advertising-driven capitalist model. But it's more than that. The deeper problem is who owns the network, who has the right to set the rules. In the past, email and the web were open protocols. Everyone had the right to participate, develop, and self-govern. Today, most networks are owned by companies. And when a company owns a network, that network is no longer common property. You can be banned, made to disappear, controlled by algorithms you cannot read. And all of this happens not because you did something wrong, but simply because you no longer hold the power. I call this the permissioned internet. Every action requires permission. Want to reach users? Ask permission. Want to develop a new feature? Ask permission. Want to connect your network with other users? Ask permission. The price of living in a network with controlled gates is that you constantly live in fear that those gates will close. Giant corporations know this well. They use control as a tool to collect fees. These fees aren't always explicit numbers but are disguised as reduced visibility, forced advertising, transaction fees, or limited access. Creators, small businesses, independent developers, all must accept this invisible tax to exist. And if you don't accept, you leave the network, taking your career, audience, and relationships down to the bottom of the ocean. Many don't see this as a problem because these services still work, are still beautiful, still convenient like a meticulously designed amusement park. You can play freely as long as you comply. But the problem is this park is not yours and the park owner can close it at any time. The truth is that control isn't just economic, it's political, it's power. Imagine if these social networks were countries, you would be a citizen with no voting rights. You don't choose the laws. You don't know who is writing the laws, you don't know when the laws will change, and you have no right to withdraw your assets. That is not freedom. But if everything is truly that bleak, is there still hope? Yes, because right in the midst of what seemed like the internet being locked into a loop of control and extraction, a new movement began to emerge. Initially weak, undefined, but carrying a very familiar spirit, the spirit of the early internet. People call it by many names crypto, Web3, blockchain. I simply call it a new way to build networks. Networks where participants can not only read, not only write, but also own asterisk. Let me tell you why this is different. Blockchain is not just a new type of database. It's not just a place to buy and sell tokens or speculate. If you look closer, you'll see that blockchain is an entirely new type of computer, not one you can put on your desk or in your pocket, but a globally distributed computer that operates without intermediaries and can make commitments that cannot be betrayed. Blockchain networks are not controlled by a single person or company. Software is at the center. And that software, once written and put into operation, will keep its word, whether you like it or not. That might sound strange, but imagine it this way. You can create a social network, a marketplace, a community on a blockchain where the rules are encoded, transparent, and agreed upon by the community. Where you know in advance, if I contribute, I will receive a fair reward. If I create value, I have voting rights. If I own a part of the network, no one can take it away from me. We once thought the internet was an open land, but then it became private property. Blockchain can be the way for us to reclaim that land, not through violence, but through architecture. Because design is destiny. You want a network where creators have power? Design it that way. You want a system where everyone is treated fairly? Write the rules into the software so they cannot be changed by sentiment, by power, or by short-term profit. And above all, let users become co-owners. Share the power. Blockchain is the first technology that allows us to make unbreakable commitments, not with words, but with code. That's no small change. It's like when humanity first invented writing, or law, or sound recording. For the first time, we can build global collaborative systems without any king, any company, any intermediary at all. That's why blockchain matters. Blockchain alone is not enough. It's like an uninhabited land, potential but still wild. For that land to become a civilization, we need one thing: tokens, digital assets. And the strange thing is, though it sounds complex, a token is very familiar. It's the digitized version of an ancient idea: ownership. Think of a stock, it proves you own a part of a company. A reward point in a game, you have access to a higher level. A vote, you have a voice. A bill, it's a right to exchange for a service. All are tokens, even if you don't call them that. The difference is, tokens on a blockchain don't need a verifier, don't need a central server, cannot be copied or faked, and they can be programmed. You can write tokens that are only used in this community. Tokens automatically generate when someone contributes. Tokens disappear if rules are violated. Any logic you can think of can be written into code. This is where technology shifts from individual to communal. Recall, the early internet was read-only. You could only read content others wrote. Then came write, where you could blog, post photos, share videos. But only with ownership do you truly become a participating voice. The difference between a user and an owner is like the difference between a passenger and a shareholder. A user only consumes, an owner has the right to shape. And that's why tokens matter. A social network where users own tokens. They can vote on display algorithms, on revenue sharing, on who is allowed to develop new features. And rewards are distributed based on contribution. The one who writes an article, the one who brings in new users, the one who finds bugs, all are acknowledged. This is no longer a model where users work and the company profits. This is a community-owned network. Tokens are the key to designing new incentive mechanisms. Instead of paying for advertising to attract users, you issue tokens. The earliest users, who take the highest risk, receive deserving rewards. Those who develop features, those who spread the network, all get a share, and they don't just receive money, they receive rights. That's the reversal of the attract-extract cycle. You don't have to wait until the network is large to extract value. You share ownership from the beginning, and that's what makes users into advocates, making the network not just big, but sustainable. And you know what the best part is? Such networks have already begun to emerge. There are financial networks that users own and operate. There are content creation platforms where viewers also receive rewards. There are games where the characters belong to the players, not the publishers. Of course, not all of them succeed. Many projects chase speculation, many tokens have no real value, many exploit the technology to scam people. But if you look beyond the froth, you'll see the seeds of a new architecture. Blockchain is the foundation, tokens are the tools, but the most important thing is people. Are we brave enough to design fair networks from the start? Part 3, a new era. A world where software is not written by companies, but by communities. You might find that strange, unrealistic, and inefficient. Look back at the history of the internet. Linux, the open-source operating system developed by thousands of volunteers. Today, it runs on most servers, Android phones, IoT devices. No company owns Linux, no shares, no CEO, yet it exists and has become the bloodstream of the internet, or Wikipedia. No ads, no growth optimization, no multi-billion-dollar revenue, yet it's where the whole world seeks knowledge, and it thrives thanks to people who believe in an ideal. Knowledge should be shared freely. Or Bitcoin, Ethereum, blockchains with no owning company. They operate as global networks where thousands of developers, miners, investors, users collectively maintain the system. The common thread: decentralization, shared ownership, rewards tied to contribution. And this is the core difference of the new generation of the internet. In the old internet, software was written by a small group, usually company employees. They decided features, rules, algorithms. Users could only use or leave. In the new internet, the network is written by the community, operated by the community, and owned by the community. Everyone can propose, debate, vote, open source code, transparent rewards, clear rules. This is not a utopia. It is a practical model that has begun to operate. And once a network is community-owned, a new question arises: how to share value fairly? Because every network creates value through transactions, interactions, data, and that value needs to be distributed not in the traditional stock market way, but through mechanisms written into tokenomics. Before diving into tokenomics, we need to understand an important concept: the tech rate, the percentage a platform takes from user transactions. For example, you sell products on Amazon, they take 30%. You create content on TikTok, they keep most of the revenue. The App Store takes 30% from every in-app transaction. That's a platform tax, sometimes invisible but always present. The higher the tech rate, the poorer the creators, and this is the paradox. Those who create the most value are often the most exploited. Blockchain allows us to redesign that entire ecosystem. Instead of letting a company keep most of the profit, we can write code to divide it equally or distribute it based on contribution. We can make the tech rate 0% due to low operating costs, or 5%, but with the entire amount redistributed to the community. And this is not just ethical, it's strategic. Imagine you are a developer. There are two platforms to build on. A traditional platform where you have no voting rights, no profit sharing. A blockchain platform where you receive tokens commensurate with your contribution and get to vote on the future direction. Which one do you choose? Building a community network is one thing, making it grow, survive, and self-operate is another challenge. In the blockchain world, the solution to that challenge lies in token incentives. You want someone to join the network. You reward them with tokens. You want someone to invite friends? Tokens. You want them to hold tokens long-term? Create staking mechanisms. You want them to develop software, write documentation, support users, design rewards. A network without incentives is a dead network. An incentivized network is a self-organizing economy. You create a new social network, initially nobody's there. You need to attract writers, interactors, spreaders. If you're a company, you have to burn money on advertising. But if you have a token, you can issue it as a reward. This is the ownership incentive model, ownership as a reward. You don't just give them access, you give them a piece of the future. Sounds like sharing stock, right? But the difference is no company, no paperwork, no investment fund needed. You just need a smart contract and a community. Of course, designing tokens isn't simple. You can't just give them away for free. You need to think like an economist, a sociologist, and a designer all at once. You need to answer: how many tokens should be issued to whom, at what rate? Will new participants be disadvantaged? Are there mechanisms to prevent speculation, inflation? Who has voting rights? Where do those rights come from? All these questions form a new field: tokenomics. Tokenomics is the art and science of designing an economy around tokens. It includes finance, behavioral psychology, game theory, and community governance. A good system is like a machine, with gears operating smoothly. Every action is met with a reasonable reward, but if designed incorrectly, you can create a bubble. People join only for profit. No one builds long-term value. Tokens are dumped, the community dissolves. That's why the best blockchain projects today invest heavily in community incentives, reward systems, skin in the game, tokens, and self-regulating mechanisms. An interesting example is Liquidity, a decentralized lending platform. They don't charge user fees. Instead, they use tokens to incentivize those who operate the protocol, stability providers, and share all revenue back to the community. Another example is Uniswap, the largest decentralized exchange. They issued Uni tokens so users have voting rights over the future of the protocol, from fee structure to new product development. This is no longer a user product, this is a community network. And when the community owns the network, one inevitable thing happens: governance. Once the network is formed, users have tokens, and rewards are in operation. The next question is, who decides the future? That's when governance enters the center of the story. In the traditional world, decision-making power belongs to the board of directors, the shareholder council, or a founding team. In blockchain, this power can be distributed to the community through tokens. A network where everyone has a voice, not through protests, petitions, or hashtags, but through direct voting with their tokens. You want to change the reward distribution algorithm? Propose a vote. You think the network should support new languages? Create a proposal. You want the community to allocate funds to new projects? Discuss, vote, implement. All of it happens on-chain, transparently, immutably, with no behind-the-scenes manipulation. The problem is that decentralized governance is something that has never existed at this scale. It's not as simple as whoever has the most tokens wins. If so, it would just be a replica of traditional corporations, just replacing shares with tokens. We need new models. Models that create a balance between influence and diversity, between efficiency and fairness, between speed of decision-making and long-term sustainability. Many models have emerged. Quadratic voting, where voting power doesn't increase linearly with the number of tokens, but slows down to prevent whales from dominating. Delegated governance, where users can delegate their voting power to trusted representatives. Multisig, where major changes require multiple signatures and have a time delay for community review. But whatever the model, they all share a common principle. Code is law, but people write the code. Blockchain allows you to write laws in software, but it's people who decide what those laws are, how they are modified, and who has the right to enact them. And this is where a paradox occurs. The more decentralized you are, the better organized you need to be. Many people think blockchain is disorganized, but in reality, a strong decentralized network requires even higher organization because no one has the power to force anything. Everything must operate by consensus, trust, and clear mechanisms in the software. In traditional software, a bug is fixed by an engineer. In blockchain, a bug can become a disaster because everyone has the right to participate, and everyone must agree for it to be fixed. Safety lies not in centralization, but in system design. And that's why I believe governance is the soul of the future internet. If we want a fair network where value belongs to its creators, where power is distributed, where everyone can collaborate without blind trust, then governance is not an appendix. It is the center. It is where technology touches philosophy, where software touches politics, where lines of code become society. Part 4, Here and Now. Blockchain is technology, but like all powerful technologies, it has two sides. One side is the computer, a vision of a transparent, fair, commonly owned platform. The other side is the casino, where everything turns into a tool for speculation, quick wealth, and price manipulation. From the beginning, both have coexisted. When I talk to people building blockchain networks, they talk about community, ownership, designing open software. But when I enter crypto forums, I see something completely different. Flickering price charts, altcoins, 100x leverage, FOMO, and FUD. And that's why many outsiders look at blockchain and exclaim, "This is just a scam." I don't blame them, because in many cases, they are right. There are projects that exist only to pump and dump. There are tokens with no function other than being hyped. There are those who create networks just to defraud users. But if you equate all blockchain with these scams, then you are also throwing away the very core that this technology carries: the ability to redesign the internet from its roots. And this is where the hardest question arises. How should we regulate blockchain? On one side, governments worry about money laundering, tax evasion, fraud. They want control, clear regulations, investor protection. On the other side, blockchain builders fear that overly strict regulations will stifle innovation, push the entire technology overseas, and kill a historic opportunity. The question isn't simple because blockchain is a hybrid ecosystem. It's technology, it's finance, it's a community. The best way to manage it is not to choose one side, but to clearly distinguish between the casino and the computer. Strict regulations for scams, of course. Protecting users from market manipulation is necessary. But we must also create conditions for open networks where users own, where communities self-organize, where software is transparent and immutable to develop freely. We've seen something similar in history when the internet began. Many people were also concerned. They feared bad content, fake news, cybercrime. But instead of stifling everything, they allowed the internet to evolve, and from that, Google, Wikipedia, Linux, Amazon were born. What we need is an intelligent regulatory system that differentiates between bad actors and innovators. And to do that, we need to accept a truth: ownership cannot be separated from markets. We can talk about community, open source software, the ideal of freedom. But if there isn't a market where people exchange value, ownership is just an empty symbol. Ownership cannot exist without a place to buy, sell, trade, and price. And that place is the market. When you own a token, you must have the right to sell it, transfer it, collateralize it, or hold it as an investment. If you can't do anything with that ownership, it's just a pretty note in the system. That's why all attempts to definancialize blockchain have failed. Because, by nature, ownership is financial, the only difference being that blockchain doesn't grant financial power to large institutions, but to each individual, no matter who they are, where they are, or what their capital is. This is what confuses many governments. The current legal system is designed for a world where assets are centrally managed, transactions go through banks, and are overseen by institutions. Blockchain is a world where anyone can create their own market with just a few lines of code. And so we face two choices: either completely shut down, pushing the technology overseas, or accept that a new world is forming and needs a new approach. Looking at history, we see a model that was very successful in dealing with new technology: corporations, limited liability companies. When this concept emerged in the 19th century, it was also controversial. How could individuals not be fully responsible for the actions of their companies? Wouldn't that open the door to fraud? But it was this model, with its limited risk and transparent operating rules, that helped millions of ordinary people dare to start businesses, contribute capital, innovate, and from that, the modern market economy was born. I believe blockchain also needs a similar model, not imposing old models on new technology, but drawing inspiration from old lessons to design a new legal framework. Open protocols could register as legally recognized decentralized organizations. Token holders could be seen as members, not speculative investors. Decision-making processes could be transparently recorded on-chain and auditable. And governments could levy taxes and supervise transparently without breaking decentralization. This won't be easy. But if done, we will have a world where technology is no longer the lawbreaker but the lawwriter. Because, after all, what blockchain brings is not just tokens or monetary value, but the ability to redesign power systems to be fairer, more transparent, more flexible. In our hands is a new technology. Before us is a future no one has yet defined. The question is not whether blockchain will be allowed, but whether we are wise enough to use it correctly right now. Part 5, what's next? Let's go back to 2007. A phone was released with no physical keyboard, unable to multitask, weak battery, expensive, ridiculed by the press. Tech enthusiasts scoffed, Microsoft called it the biggest mistake, Nokia didn't even care. But then the iPhone changed everything. It wasn't just a product, it was a new platform. And in the next few years, a colossal ecosystem emerged. The App Store, ride-hailing apps, digital banks, mobile social networks, and a whole generation of billion-dollar startups. Everything happened very quickly. But before that explosion, the iPhone had a silent incubation period. Years of testing, chip design, software optimization, SDK standardization, building a developer community. That's what I call the iPhone moment. The moment when dormant technology suddenly explodes into irreversible daily life. Blockchain, at this moment, is still in its incubation phase. We have networks, tokens, communities, small experiments, but the breakthrough hasn't arrived. Software is still difficult to use, digital wallets are cumbersome, user experience is unfamiliar, and most importantly, there isn't a killer app that makes hundreds of millions of people join for practical utility, rather than for speculation. But all signs indicate it's coming. Remember the internet in 1995? Slow read, confusing email, rudimentary web. People scoffed at the idea of buying things online. Then Amazon appeared, Google appeared, Facebook appeared, and everyone gradually forgot the initial skepticism. With blockchain, we are in that 1995 moment, and I believe that within the next 5-10 years, the leap will happen, not through hype, but through real products, real utility, real value. What makes me believe this is that the pieces are gradually falling into place. Wallets without seed phrases are emerging. Blockchain networks can handle hundreds of thousands of transactions per second. Tokens are more flexibly programmable than ever. Governance models are becoming increasingly sophisticated. Developers are flocking in like in the early days of the App Store. We don't need more ideals, we need applications, and they are coming. So which applications will lead the next wave? Let's start where the internet once began, social networks. We are too accustomed to closed social networks. You write, they display. You create value, they collect money. You build a community, they lock the gates. That entire model is based on one premise: you own nothing. But what if you owned your account, your content, your connections, and your own data? What if you could take your entire community to another platform without losing anything? What if a social network wasn't a company but an open protocol? That's what projects like Farcaster, Lens, and Blue Sky are doing. They are building social protocols where you can post, interact, follow, and everything belongs to you, not locked into any app. Imagine it like email. You can send from Gmail to Outlook, from Proton to Zoho, but all run on the same protocol. Social media can and should operate that way. The second area that will explode is gaming and the metaverse. Gaming is where true ownership really matters. If you spend 100 hours leveling up a weapon, building a house, collecting items, but the publisher can wipe it out overnight, you're just a renter. With blockchain, items can become NFTs that you truly own. You can buy, sell, transfer, even use them across different games. Imagine a sword that can be used in Zelda, then carried over to Elden Ring. A character you level up in one game can join a new universe. This isn't just game investment. This is digital composability, and it will redefine how we play, own, and interact in virtual worlds. Next, NFTs, but not for speculation. NFTs are a unique, non-fungible form of ownership. In their early days, they were distorted into tools for flipping monkey pictures for quick profit. But beneath that froth are much deeper applications. Artists can sell their work without intermediaries. Fans can co-own a song. Film producers can fundraise from the community. Designers can issue certificates for original versions. And most interestingly, NFTs can be programmed. You can create NFTs that divide royalties, automatically pay rewards, change over time. It's not just a digital image, but a digitized economic script, a fresh application. Community storytelling, a comic book universe where each character is created by users. They write stories, design costumes, create plotlines. Whoever is loved by the community, their token is integrated into the main storyline. Prominent characters can appear in movies, games, products. That's what's happening in DAOs like Nouns, Storyverse, or Loot. They are no longer fan communities but co-author communities. The creative world now needs no publishers, no film studios, no broadcasters, just the internet, a wallet, and imagination. Now we come to a less glamorous but perhaps most important application: public finance infrastructure. The internet has changed how we communicate, work, and entertain, but it hasn't touched core financial infrastructure. Banks, payment systems, money transfers, loans, custodians. These things still operate like in the 20th century, slow, expensive, and full of layers of intermediaries. Blockchain gives us the opportunity to build a public financial infrastructure that everyone can access without permission, not dependent on central banks or intermediaries. A system like Uniswap, a decentralized exchange with no servers, no registration required, open 24/7, or Aave, a lending system without banks, all written in code, operating automatically with no one in control. This isn't a dream. This is finance as software. And when financial infrastructure becomes open source, transparent, and auditable, we can build services even for those who have never had a bank account. With a phone and a decentralized wallet, you can send money to family on the other side of the world in seconds, almost for free. No SWIFT, no Western Union, no trusting anyone but the software. That's what the internet has never been able to do. Blockchain can. And then there's AI. AI is the next giant wave, and it will touch every industry. But who will own AI? Currently, the largest models belong to a few companies. They train with community data but keep the results as private assets. You create content, they use it for training. You write articles, post photos, it becomes data for AI to learn from, but you don't get a share. Blockchain can reverse that. AI can be community-owned. You create data, you are acknowledged. You teach the model, you receive tokens. You contribute to building AI, you have the right to shape its development. This is the idea of cooperative AI, artificial intelligence as a common asset, governed by the community, transparent, auditable, where power doesn't rest in the hands of a few super-large corporations. Because if not, AI will become a form of supreme corporation, smarter, faster, cheaper, and entirely not ours. And then there's a difficult issue: deepfakes. Blockchain cannot stop deepfakes, but it can help us verify what is real. If every image, video, and audio can be attached with a digital signature, then you can know who created this video, when, and whether it has been edited. This is how blockchain doesn't fight deepfakes, but neutralizes their impact by increasing the trustworthiness of what is truly authentic. And so, we've come to the end of this journey. Can the internet be redesigned? The answer is yes. But not by begging tech companies to change, nor solely by regulations, though they are necessary, but by technology, architecture, and community. We can rewrite the network. We can build systems where users own, creators are rewarded, and the community itself is the manager. Blockchain is not a perfect solution. It is young, it is distorted, it is easily abused. But behind every drawback is an unprecedented opportunity, a fairer internet for everyone. And the most miraculous thing, you don't need anyone's permission to start. Open your wallet, write code, participate, build your own network. Thank you for patiently staying with me until the end of this discussion. This is a work that not only discusses technology, but is also a blueprint for redesigning power, trust, and how we live in the digital space. If you've listened this far, perhaps you're not merely a content consumer. You're asking questions: where am I in this world? Do I truly own anything? And if not, what can I do? I don't expect you to agree with everything presented here. But if some idea lingers, if some question still troubles you, then I believe this journey has not been in vain. If you have thoughts to share, I hope you consider them. This is not about pleasing algorithms, but about creating a space for dialogue. I don't seek applause, I seek honesty and reception. And if you have a book that resonates within you, something you haven't read yet, or have read but wish to revisit through a different lens, please consider exploring it further. Perhaps you yourself will open the next conversation. No topic is too far-fetched if it is sincere enough. We are living in an era where knowledge is no longer taught from a podium, but built from open connections, from voices that seem small but illuminate forgotten dark corners. And if blockchain truly is an invitation, then I hope you don't just stop at listening. Be a writer, an owner, a creator. The internet, like life, will not change if there are only observers. Be a participant.